Hey, you guys, it's Dustin. So, in about 2 hours, it's going to be 4th of July here in California, which means it's already 4th of July for many of you. Ha ha, America. Okay, now, over the past year, I started writing for The Mallard, a British magazine. If you haven't checked us out, please do. There's a lot of great writers, and somehow they let me in. All right, I'm right now for our print edition doing a serialized novel, A California Kid in King Harry's Court. Okay, and then I do articles from monthly. Anyway, uh, so I wanted to talk about celebrating being an American while writing and participating in English tradition, and how that's implied. Okay, the being proud to be an American. I'm proud to be an American in part because a lot of the best things about America, in fact, the things that we were defending against the English, all right, came from English tradition. Okay? And so I don't see it as any contradiction between the American flag and the Union Jack. Okay? Now, of course, there are issues and stuff, and the vicissitudes of history have made us partners, and it's wonderful. Okay? But even back from the beginning, of course, we celebrate like, yeah, we fought off George III. But actually, it was English. It was English people. It was British people who did that, not Americans. We weren't Americans yet, and so now, I want to talk about the idea of the U.S. Revolution as not just a conservative revolution, but a second English Civil War. Now, this is an idea that a lot of people have written about more than me. Okay, I'm primarily an English teacher, though, but I do teach U.S. history as well. Okay, which I'll get into how those two connect, because you can't have British history without literature. Anyway, so let's think about what the American Revolution was. Okay? We were trying to maintain our rights and traditions that we had built while we were English in the colonies during that wonderful salutary period of salutary neglect while the throne was focused on other issues. We were using our British rights to make an economy, okay? To represent ourselves in government, to maintain civil order. Okay? A lot of those things that underlie that sanctity of contract, free elections, okay? Accountability of the executive to the legislature, okay? Whether it's the monarch or the president. Okay? Trial by jury, representation when it comes to taxes, salutary, this mix of all these things that came, I mean, they're in other places, but in large part, a lot of these things that we were fighting to defend came from that mix of Anglo-Saxon, Danish, and Norman history that is the England. Okay? All of that was established before we became America. Again, proud of it, okay? But proud of it because of the branch and root that it came from. Okay, now, in order to really understand the American Revolution, you need to think about, I think, the English Civil War about 100 years earlier. Okay, when they offed King Charles I's head because he stepped over the line when it came to the monarch's power and parliament, and that caused a shift in politics that was that I think was already in the subterra, but and it caused a change in how the British people thought about their relationship with authority. Okay, and in large part, very broad perspective, it was a movement of the center of power is not in the monarch, it's in parliament. Now that had already been established, but that one settled it. Okay, it is not the divine right of kings, and now there's something to be said for that metaphysical structure of viewing reality. Okay, but as far as the ethos of the island went, the power is in the consent of the governed. Thank you, John Locke. Okay, and the fact that we as human beings have a right to life, liberty, and property. What we produce with our liberty and our right and our life. Okay, now those are not just new ideas. Those are things that are inherent. They're part of what we are. Okay, they're not. It's not even. Oh, Locke discovered that. Oh yeah, he discovered it. He didn't come up. It created. Right. It was something that was already in us. Okay, it goes all the way back to Aristotle, if not further. Okay, all of it's implicit. Anyway, so I actually think that the American Revolution was a furthering of that progression from like power in the divine monarch. No, it's actually in Parliament who represent the people and the nobility. And the American Revolution was actually okay. It's actually in the people themselves. Okay, and let's. I mean, now we do have an executive because, of course, when in the Constitution. Thanks, my favorite founding father, James Madison. Okay, he wrote the Constitution, and when they said in order to form a more perfect union, I think that more perfect, we were okay. We don't know if we'll admit that we were imperfect, but a more perfect union. I think that's a little jab at an admission that the Articles of Confederation really didn't work. We do need an executive. Okay, I think the pendulum went a little too far off to the not having at least a figure of power. Anyway, but that movement of authority away from the executive, that comes from English tradition. Okay, there was always a separation in large part, or at least there was an awareness of danger in English tradition since King John, that hey, don't confuse your person with the power you hold and represent. Okay, I think there's something in that has to do with the royal we. Okay, this is not just I, the king. This is I, the office. All right, and of course there's more to it than that, and some Yank like I could probably not really get it. Although, I mean, I'm being humble. Most of what I read is Uncle Bill. All right, so. And especially his histories, which I really think that that the English Civil War in the 1600s was an application of some of the ideas that Shakespeare was either focusing on or breaking apart. But there were questions about the monarch and authority going on. What's the relationship between the person and his or her quality and virtues with the office itself? Okay, and so I really think you can draw a thread between Shakespeare's history plays to John Locke to Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. Okay, and so I see this as part of the same progression of ideas. Okay, now I love me some Thomas Jefferson. Okay, I think the Declaration is one of the most beautiful documents. Well, maybe beautiful in its austerity. Let's say. I mean, it's not exactly aesthetic, but I mean, and by the way, the fact that everyone should read the rough draft of the Declaration. The biggest paragraph is him saying that slavery is evil. Okay, the idea that the Declaration of Independence was meant to just enshrine slavery, that's a word I'm not going to use here because I want it to still be for kids. All right, they understood that this was a problem. Now he was like, this is one of the biggest reasons we're breaking up with England. All right, but anyway, dispensing with that. So love me some Thomas Jefferson. We have the Declaration up on our wall. Okay, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that's that's essential for the correct Aristotelian perspective on government. The idea that the people exist and we live our lives, and then to protect that, we create governments. Okay, now I do think Jefferson was wrong when he argued that the American Revolution was the same as the French Revolution, that it was the same cause for liberty. I actually think he was wrong about that because the American Revolution was a conservative revolution. It was defensive. Okay, they were trying. First off, the representatives in the colonies. They tried to prevent it. The first Continental Congress. There were elements there that tried to join Britain as like a pan-Atlantic union. Okay, they also wanted to honor the king. They wanted to respect. That's why it's in the Declaration that we shouldn't just throw off authority just for small causes. All right, they wanted to be still part of the English tradition. Okay, we were also fighting a defensive war when it came to it. They were trying to defend what they had built during the period of salutary neglect. Now, of course, the other perspective, I don't know if it's an either or other perspective, but the British Crown had just spent a lot of time and money in the 7 Years' War, the First World War, trying to maintain those colonies and defend them. So they wanted payback from it. Okay, now I think it was actually not an issue of getting paid from the colonies. It was an issue of how much restriction was placed on it. I really wonder if we would still be a part of England, or at least Britain, if there weren't so many the representative taxation issues. Anyway, alternative histories. Okay, now contrast the American Revolution, where they were trying to defend some rights that they had already lived under and that they had already lived out during the time of salutary neglect. Okay, if you took the British values and put it in a petri dish and let it alone, that's what happened. Okay, they had built an economy when England was focusing on issues in Europe. Now, contrast with that with the French Revolution. That was an offensive war. It was not a defensive war, besides being offensive. But they were trying to liberate themselves and gain things and rights and property that they had never had. They had never learned how to use. All right. Now, I'll leave it to Victor Hugo to evaluate how it went. He says in Les Miserables that it ended up that the worst aspects of the upper class ended up being lived out by the worst aspects of the lower class. All right, so now that's of course not everybody, but I mean, pay attention to what happened within a few years. Okay, the idea of we need to make a perfect society. It was actually a Platonic or a bastardized Platonic view of society. We need to make everything equality, fraternity, and liberté. Equality and liberty are different things. Okay, if you have freedom, you can't have the type of equality they were trying to establish anyway. Anyway, the American Revolution, Aristotelian, focused on individuals, focused on locality and subsidiarity. That's a conservative idea. All right, and then whereas the French, it was like, okay, if something doesn't fit, we need to off it. Okay. Anyway, now so American Revolution, 4th of July, hoorah. Okay, but it's not a revolution. It's not a celebration of revolution per se. Okay, the idea of like we need to revolt for the sake of revolt or liberation. No, it was about successfully defending what we had built and creating a system whereby more people can build. Okay, the idea of liberty. Okay, now within all of that is, I think, still within the English tradition of ideas. Okay, the Anglosphere. Okay, now again, I can't read Shakespeare's history plays without seeing it as part of my history as an American. Okay, and they're my favorite ones. Okay? Prince Hal will always be my king until Jesus comes back. Okay, I mean that's a whole other issue. Okay, if your king worships one king, you worship anyway. Anyway, I just wanted to point all that out. Okay, I'm proud to be an American. Love writing for the Mallard. Okay, and hope this. I hope this lands a little bit. Okay, of course there are more people who know more about this and contribute more about it than I. Whatever. Okay, blessings. Have a wonderful night. And haha, we fought you guys off.